The Minotaur, half man and half bull, victor and victim. Pablo Picasso's favorite symbol for himself. A creature of the light and a creature of the shadows, his home is the labyrinth and its fate is death. Every act of creation, said Picasso, is first of all an act of destruction. The hand of the artist is the hand of the matador. Picasso said his first love, Fernand Olivier, had a nature that sought its own torment. Barcelona and a literary cafe called the Four Cats. Already in 1900 it was inhabited by writers and poets, musicians and painters, among them the young Pablo Picasso. Picasso impressed his friends by sketching them in the fashionable cafe style of Toulouse-Lautrec. We spoke of him, one of his sitters later remembered, as a legendary hero. And that was how Picasso drew himself. Only 19, yet already his eyes seemed to have stared into the darkness of the world. Science and Charity, which won the gold medal at the Malaga Fine Arts Exhibition of 1897. Picasso was 16 when he painted it. His father posed as the doctor. This was to be the first of the many deathbeds by which the young Picasso stood. Coruña, cold and wet, a town Picasso detested. His sister, Maya de la Concepcion, died here of diphtheria at the age of 8. His family came here when Picasso was 10. His father was professor of art at the local academy. The Academy of Fine Arts, where Picasso was enrolled as a student in 1892. So quickly did he learn that at the age of 14, his father bequeathed to him his palette and brush, and according to legend, swore never to paint again. At the age of 14, said Picasso, I drew like Raphael. I never drew like a child. Malaga, where he was born in 1881. Picasso could draw before he could speak. In Malaga, if the wind comes in from the southwest, it's said you can smell the desert. He was 3 years old when his father took him to his first bullfight in the Malaga ring. His first drawings were bullfighting scenes. Many years later, the poet Ramon Gomez was to write, "In Malaga, I found an explanation of what Picasso is, and I understood to what degree he is a matador, and how, whatever he may do, it is in reality bullfighting." 1900, the young matador makes his first visit to Paris. In Coruña, he had learned to draw like Raphael. In Paris, he adopts the style of Toulouse-Lautrec and the brushstrokes of Vincent van Gogh. In 1901, Picasso finds himself at another deathbed. His friend, the poet Casagemas, who'd accompanied him to Paris, commits suicide over a tragic love affair. Picasso mourns him in a flurry of Van Gogh-like brushstrokes. For Picasso, his friend was a victim of the war between the sexes. Casagemas was sexually impotent, taunted and rejected by his lover. He tried first to shoot her. When he missed, he shot himself. Just as Van Gogh had sent his severed ear to the woman who taunted him, so in the bullring, the victorious matador is traditionally presented with the ear of the conquered bull. Picasso could not bring himself to go to his defeated friend's funeral. It was only months later that he would paint this portrait of Casagemas on his deathbed. Wrapped up in his big winter coat, cold, alone, a sad self-portrait of 1901. It was thinking of Casagemas that made me start painting in blue, Picasso later remembered. The color drained out of his art to be replaced by an exaggerated pity for hungry mothers and their children. When she heard of her son's death, the mother of Casagemas dropped dead from the shock. Haunted faces crowd Picasso's vision. Staring out over the rooftops of Barcelona, he saw only a sad, nocturnal blue. In 1904, blue gives way to pink. The terrors of the previous years find a face in the emaciated figure of the madman. In 1905, the Rose period. Picasso himself is Harlequin. The poet Apollinaire is his fat jester friend. Picasso has found a family of acrobats to accompany him. He begins his first great love affair with Fernande Olivier. They set up home together. A new serenity enters his art. The dark ghosts of the blue years will return to haunt their maker, but for the time being, their era is over. Picasso always claimed that he could look directly into the sun. 1906, Gozol in the Spanish Pyrenees. The sunlight begins to stream into Picasso's art. He was back in his native Spain, among people he knew and faces he recognized. In Paris, Picasso had seen an exhibition of primitive Iberian sculptures. He is amazed by the simple geometry of the figures, the fierce expressiveness of the faces. The willowy nude boys of his Rose period solidify suddenly into painted wood. A self-portrait of 1906. Picasso becomes Picasso. A square for his torso, a cylinder for his neck, an oval mask for his head. 2 pieces of coal for his eyes. Picasso comes to Gozol in the summer of 1906, accompanied by Fernand Olivier. It was to be a momentous holiday. Away from the shifting, ephemeral world of modern Paris, with Spanish soil under his feet and a Spanish sun over his shoulder, in the clear Pyrenean light, Picasso could see clearly again. Rooftops as solid as sunlit rocks. A primitive force has found a form in which it can be preserved. The human body becomes a piece of ancient sculpture. Picasso paints the traditional Catalan dance of the sardana like a human sun. The dancer's raised arms imitate the sun's rays. It is to be the first of many such dances in his art. Primitive, elemental, pagan, forms as old as the Catalan peasant. To see things as they are, that was the ambition Picasso set himself. In these faces, inspired by Iberian sculptures, Picasso seems to have scraped away the surface of the modern human being to discover the ancient ancestor within us all. A fierce nude. She seems to have been carved roughly out of wood. The knife marks remain. a disguised self-portrait of 1907. As a boy, his mother had dressed him up in a sailor's suit. To have a direct vision, he said, that is the thing. Another child with its mother. This time, the idyllic scene is fraught with ancient terrors. In years to come, Picasso would claim to have African blood in him through his Spanish Moorish ancestors. But in June 1907, the real moment of epiphany. In the ethnography collection of the Trocadero Museum, Picasso discovers the fetishes, tribal masks, and fertility figures of Africa and the South Seas. At that moment, he later claimed, I realized what painting was all about. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, a brothel scene, which changed the course of 20th century art. When Picasso's closest associate, Braque, first saw it, he said it was like swallowing paraffin. André Derain warned Picasso, one day we'll find you hanging behind this huge painting. It's such a cursed enterprise. Picasso called it his first exorcism painting. It would protect him against evil female spirits. He was suffering from venereal disease at the time. Horta de Ebro, the Spanish mountains. In 1907, a large memorial exhibition devoted to Cézanne is held in Paris. Picasso and Braque explore Cézanne's manner with a new understanding. Landscape with two figures. Treat everything in nature, said Cézanne, according to the sphere, the cylinder, and the cone. Picasso divides, intersects, separates, and reorganizes the forms of the human head. To paint, he said, is to destroy. The great classicist landscapes, wrote Cézanne, are those where light is spiritualized, where a landscape is a smile flickering with keen intelligence. A facetious critic looking at these new landscapes complains of little houses like cubes. The name sticks. Man with mandolin. He studies the figure, wrote the poet Apollinaire, as a surgeon dissects a corpse. There is no vanishing point, no horizon, no perspective, no beginning, no end, just the hard solidity of space. A humble guitar, seen from the front and the side at once. Picasso. I do not paint what I see, I paint what I know. In African art, Picasso had found a way of exerting a primitive power over the human figure. In his cubist paintings, he learns how to hold the figure steady, while he examines it from all sides, measuring it, stripping away its surface, cutting into its solidity, rebuilding it. Picasso, we were trying to go in the opposite direction from Impressionism. That is why we abandoned color, emotion, and feelings. We were searching for an architectonic basis capable of restoring order. Out of angles and curves, segments and sections, shallow hollows and protrusions, Picasso assembles a new human figure. Each step, every simplification leads to another. 1912. Picasso, feeling he is losing sight of the visible world, introduces a real fragment of chair caning into a still life. The real is no longer merely represented, it is included. Jean Cocteau. The only pleasures the analytical cubist permits himself are the objects found upon a cafe table. The austere work is executed with the rigor of a mathematical series. A Spanish guitar is taken apart over and over again, then put back together in its exquisitely simple new form. As a challenge to the old art, Picasso introduces a whole range of humble new materials into his collages. Squares of wallpaper, his morning news. It's the most radical change in the artist's way of seeing since the discovery of perspective. By 1913, it seems as if there is nowhere for cubism to go except into the realm of pure abstraction. But Picasso refuses to take what many consider to be the obvious next step. There is no abstract art, he writes. You must always start with something. Afterward, you can remove all traces of reality, but the object will have left an indelible mark. Wall reliefs, wooden cutouts, guitar-shaped assemblages. Having come so close to destroying the old objects, Picasso begins to create cupboards full of new ones. Where previously he had shattered, he now begins to build. Old instruments find a new form for a new century. A bottle of Bass and an old newspaper rise up from the table like a tottering Eiffel Tower. For the first time, critics begin to speak of Picasso as if he was a magician. The Catalan sculptor Fenosa, passing by the artist's studio, hears Picasso shouting to himself, "I am God, I am God." 1914 to 1916. Picasso returns with a vengeance to painting, cataloguing and recapitulating all the audacious new techniques he has developed. He dedicates a set of pictures to his new girlfriend, Eva. Picasso is happy. The Great War passes him by. A playful exuberance lights up his art. Man with pipe, man with moustache, man with chimney. Suddenly Picasso emerges from his decade of cubism with a characteristically abrupt change of style. To everyone's astonishment, he's become a follower of Ingres. In Olga, Picasso found a companion appropriate to his new social status as a successful and immensely fashionable young artist. By choosing Ingres as his model, he was choosing the most elegant society portraitist of them all. Inveterate hoarder, Picasso kept everything. Olga's dress remained in his private collection. Picasso explained the demise of cubism. Having understood that collective adventure was a lost cause, each of us went away, alone, like Van Gogh, towards an essentially tragic experience. Not for the last time in his career, Picasso measures himself against the art of the past. A new order enters his art. We have to go back to the Greeks and the Egyptians. We belong to a time in which there is no order or canon enabling us to subject artistic production to rules. The Greeks and Egyptians had that. It's as if Picasso, having watched Europe disintegrate into the Great War, is trying single-handedly to bring order and stillness back into the world. He paints a pair of village dancers. In the heyday of Impressionism, Renoir had brought this same village couple to life. But where Renoir's dancers skip and bounce, Picasso's tragic couple gaze out, immobile. It was Cézanne who said he wanted to make Impressionism an art of the museums. It's Picasso who turns Impressionism to stone. The war over, Picasso sets about putting his own life in order. He marries Olga Koklova. They settle down to a comfortable bourgeois existence. Olga doesn't approve of Picasso's bohemian friends, so they stop coming to visit. Picasso finds himself alone. His so-called neoclassical works are imbued with the same gravity, the same massive frontality of the Gozol paintings. Picasso has invented a race of giants and giantesses. They appear naggingly familiar, but the world has never seen their like before. Of the Letter, a deliberate masterpiece of 1921. 7 years after Braque and Apollinaire go off to the war, Picasso remembers his friends. Picasso. Since Van Gogh, we have all been self-taught. One could almost say primitive painters. The beach at Biarritz. With Olga, Picasso begins a lifelong habit of spending his summers on the beach. Wives and mistresses would come and go, but the sea would always be there. Women bathers watching a plane. Juin Lepin, 1920. Picasso gently mocks his bathers. They bob around in the water like curious sea lions. Already they have begun to resemble the rocks on the beach. It is on the beach that Picasso plays out his greatest classical tragedy, The War of the Sexes. Figures on a Beach, 1931. Has sheer physical passion, asked one critic, ever been made so palpable in paint? Their tongues are like knives, their mouths devour. Their heads are tiny, their passion awesome. Figure throwing a stone. The bather has become an archaic war machine, a Roman catapult. When I paint, I always try to give an image people are not expecting, and beyond that, one they reject. The body of the bather has become indistinguishable from a pile of stones on the beach. Seated woman with a book, a moment of peace on the battleground. Her head is enthroned, her body enormous and immobile. Picasso's bathers, a critic writes, sun themselves like lazy dinosaurs on the beach. In 1921, Olga gives birth to a baby boy, Paolo. At the age of 40, Picasso becomes a father for the first time. On the beach, the neoclassical Holy Family takes a tranquil holiday. Picasso paints Paolo on every birthday until the boy is 4. He paints him as a little harlequin, a miniature version of himself. Later on, Paolo would often be in trouble with the police. In the end, he becomes Picasso's chauffeur. The domestic bliss doesn't last, nor does the neoclassical style. Olga proves to be a difficult and jealous companion. Picasso lashes out at her in a portrait of awesome savagery. Summer, 1925, the kiss. When I love a woman, that tears everything apart, especially my painting. Everybody criticizes me because I've had the courage to live my life in broad daylight, with more destruction than most others. A painting is a sum of destructions. Never before in art has the image of woman been torn apart with such ferocity. Woman in a red armchair. Picasso attacks Olga's bourgeois world with fierce surrealism. He complains to his friends that Olga is always screaming at him. Olga's psychic storms lead her to a nervous breakdown. Picasso paints her as a reptilian vagina dentata. For the first time since his childhood, Picasso chooses a religious subject, the crucifixion. Yet he declares himself a convinced atheist. It's not Christ who is being crucified, it's himself. The colors are the red and yellow of the corrida. The terror reaches a climax in Woman with Stiletto. Based on David's great Death of Marat, the assassin bursts in upon her victim in the bath. She is the now familiar fanged mouth, he is the tiny head she threatens to devour. The bath overflows with blood. The letter remains unfinished. Bullfight, Death of the Matador. For the critic Michel Leiris, the Spanish bullfight was the only truly tragic entertainment surviving in Western Europe. For Picasso, the corrida becomes a ritualistic reenactment of the struggles of life. Picasso had been going to the bullfight since he was 3. He too comments upon its sexual charge. In the ring, the bull is continually replaced. He is everlasting. For Picasso, the bull becomes a symbol of both life and death. If man is a savage bull, then woman becomes a picador's horse, constantly sapping the bull's strength. Every act of creation is, first of all, an act of destruction. A guitar, made from the very floor cloth used to wipe away the blood after Picasso's domestic bullfight with Olga in 1926. Picasso had originally intended to cover it with razor blades. In the end, he pierced it with nails. Another guitar, made this time from a crucified shirt. I want my paintings to be able to defend themselves, to resist the invader, just as though there were razor blades on all surfaces, so no one could touch them without cutting his hands. The Minotaur, the body of a man and the mind of a bull. According to mythology, Athenian youths, boys and girls, are ritualistically sacrificed to assuage the Minotaur's enormous appetite. The Minotaur becomes Picasso's favorite alter ego. The age-old tragedy is given modern dress. Death of the woman bullfighter. Her exposed genitalia tempt the bull's horns. How to escape the terrors of the domestic corrida. Picasso turns once again to the tranquil world of classical antiquity. "You know, I met love," says the tart, the leading female character in Picasso's play Desire Caught by the Tail. "He has scraped knees, and he begs from door to door." Picasso. It's hard to say whether he wants to awaken her or kill her.